Hi, I'm Michael Dervan, feeling rather strange to be sitting on a velvet chair in an open space at the National Opera House in Wexford. This is somewhere I'm used to hearing the festival's excited opening night buzz all around me. Today, I'm hemmed in by COVID-19, and I'm here for an impossible interview with opera director Graham Vick, who's also artistic director of Birmingham Opera Company. Hi, Graham.
Hi, Michael.
You've long been a fierce opponent of anyone who sees opera as elitist, as an art form only for those who've passed some kind of initiation test. This made me wonder how your first work was received. So I delved into the archives of Opera magazine. And about your 1978 Scottish opera production of Holst's Savitri, it wrote, "There is little action, and Graham Vick's production relied on lighting for its effect. All the drama was in Dame Janet Baker's singing, tender and consolatory with her husband Satyavan, Philip Langridge, proud and radiant in her encounter with death, the vibrant John Shirley Quirk." I read that as a high compliment, on the lines of Stravinsky's remark that great orchestration is when you don't notice it. Is that how you read it when you were in your mid-20s back then?
Well, of course. Where do you expect the drama and the production to be, except in the singing? It's absolutely the heart of how I direct. And yeah, I mean, ultimately, I long for an audience to come out of an opera discussing what it was about, not how it was done. Okay, that's good to know. And you felt that way even when you were in your 20s, because absolutely.
Great. So back to 2020. Where were you, and what were you working on when the COVID-19 lockdown hit you?
Fortunately, when the lockdown, well, not fortunately, when the lockdown hit me, I was about to go to Berlin to do Queen of Spades, and I was at my home in London, which is therefore where I remained.
Okay, and so you weren't actually in work, you were just about to start work?
It was 1 week before I was going to start rehearsals.
Okay, and will that work be rescheduled for you?
In 2024, Michael.
Wow. and what should you have been working on?
It has, because they'd already, of course, that late, they built the sets and the costumes. Yeah. The chorus had all had their costumes fittings. It was very late.
Let's hope they didn't eat too much, or they won't have eaten too much over the next 4 years.
That's true.
What should you have been working on now, 6 months later, either in it or actually on it in preparation?
Well, this week, I should have begun rehearsals for the Rake's Progress, Stravinsky, in Rome, with Daniele Gatti. That's what I should have been doing. What I am doing is starting rehearsals in Rome on Tuesday for a production of a version of Mozart's Zaide, an unfinished Singspiel, in a version by the great Italian novelist Italo Calvino, that he wrote for a friend of mine and for myself in the 1980s. And so it's a rather wonderful version of that. We're doing that in Rome. The cast has 5 singers who will be the 5 singers of the Rake's Progress. There's no chorus for the. It can be done with a small orchestra and an actor, hardly any set. So it's a very specific, targeted new production of a piece that I know I can sustain social distancing limitations for the cast, and that the theatre can present relatively economically, but is at the same time a really unusual and interesting artistic enterprise.
And how has your COVID-19 time been? Were you one of these people who got very active, or did you find it difficult to work, or did you give up work entirely, which some creative people did?
I read a great deal. I made friends with my home. I mean, it's more than 20 years since I spent 3 months at home. So that was an extraordinary thing for me. And my garden. I spent a lot of time in the garden. We were blessed with very good weather.
That's right, yeah.
So that was wonderful. I read. And I carried on working. I carried on working in terms of Birmingham, what we were doing there. We did a big digital program. We carried on doing workshops digitally. We developed a whole new program and strategy there. So that was quite new. That was good, healthy time. And I went for walks. I played the piano. I regret to say I enjoyed it.
This is a strange follow-on to what you just said, but the pressures in COVID-19 are pressures of transformation and destruction of quite an extreme kind. And those pressures are always with us one way or the other. So operatically speaking, what do you think is most important for us to preserve, or to try to preserve, from the destruction that's going to take place as we negotiate the difficulties? Because companies are going to suffer, individual careers are going to suffer, audience is now slightly unpredictable in terms of whether people will actually want to go out and take health risks.
Look, a very big and crucial part of the early part of COVID was us all understanding the horrible divisions within our society and inequalities, and the desires to come out of it better, doing what we do better. Since then, the horrible economic truth has occurred, and all the talk is now of survival. But look, survival is not enough. It really isn't. Survival won't do. And I think it's the job and the responsibility of all of us who make opera to address the fact, how are we going to make opera for everybody? How are we going to make the thing that we live for, that we love and that turns us on, how are we going to make sure that it lives in the lives of everybody? And I think that's its greatest danger now, as we have an irresponsible government closing down public finances, as public subsidy is shrinking, as the rich get richer but don't want to give the money away. We have a very, very difficult landscape. So what we've got to hold on to is why we do it. And if we don't do it for everybody, what's the point?
Mm-hmm. And something we know now in a way we wouldn't have expected to know even 7 months ago is that life never turns out exactly as you might expect it to. So what was the most unexpected transformation for you in your opera career?
Oh, the most going to Glasgow.
Okay, and tell me a bit about that. You know, how...
Well, I worked at Glasgow as an assistant director when I was 23. Mm-hmm. And when I left, I thought, well, I'll never be going there again. And I was completely sure it was a very bad fit. A very bad fit. I'm a working class boy from Merseyside. And the work went perfectly well. But there were aspects of it that went less well for an angry young man. So it took me by surprise being asked to go back. But I was on the plane back from St. Petersburg, as it had just been called. I'd started rehearsing Prokofiev's War and Peace in Leningrad. And by the time it reached its first night, the city was called St. Petersburg. which is, of course, the city of Queen of Spades and Dostoevsky. So on the plane, on the way back of a very intense 2 months in Dostoevsky's city, I said to my agent, well, I've really got to do the Queen of Spades. I really want to find somewhere to do the Queen of Spades. Now, I've learned Russian, I can speak some Russian. I'd really like to be doing that. Then 4 days later, he rang me up and said, Glyndebourne would like you to do Queen of Spades. So, although I did have reservations about Glyndebourne, even then, Queen of Spades won, really. And I went and had a marvelous experience and enjoyed the extraordinary privilege of those working conditions, and the budgets and the care and the control over casting, all those marvelous things for the years I was at Glyndebourne. But the truth is that those 9 years when I came out of them, I was incredibly politicized. And my work took a very big turn in the last couple of years at Glyndebourne and since then, which was thanks to Glyndebourne, partially.
Yeah. That probably wasn't the gift they expected to give you, actually.
I think that's right, but I mean, the people who run Glyndebourne are very passionate, generous people, and all of us know that wherever opera happens, and happens well, is for the good of us all.
Is there any opera-related personal transformation that you're still longing for or hankering after?
I long to do Orfeo of Monteverdi, which I have never done. It's the one piece that I'm longing to do. But I'm at the moment looking at doing it possibly in Oman. I'm trying to do a version where we might have some Arab instruments as part of the continuo and use some Arab vocal techniques as part of the way of doing it. Okay. So that's the thing that excites me most at the moment. It's a new idea personally.
And if I gave you a magic wand with supernatural powers, what changes would you like to engineer for the post-COVID-19 world of opera? So we don't know where everything's going to fall in that regard in reality. But if you were to be in control of the situation after all that point, when the COVID has settled, so to speak, what would you do?
I would like to see all of the government money given to regional and local authorities to spend on opera companies. I would like to see an enormous spread of grassroots opera. That's what I'd really like to see. I think a shift so that audiences would change, so that audiences would see themselves finally reflected on the stage, in the orchestra bit, in the technical, and in the management.
So is that...
I mean that obviously racially, I mean it from every possible diverse point of view, gender.
Okay. So a kind of decentralization in the broadest possible sense.
Well, I'd like us to stop pursuing excellence for the sake of excellence and pursue art for the impact that it has on human beings, and therefore not privilege the rich. I would like opera not to be one of the things that separates the experience of the haves from the have-nots.
And I've got another little bit of magical imagination for you. There's a genius who's been out of work and locked down since last spring, but he's managed to invent a time machine. So where in operatic history would you want to travel?
Oh, what a great question. I mean, it might be to the world premiere of Idomeneo in Munich. It might be there to just watch and hear Mozart scrabbling around with those impossible people, trying to finally put that amazing opera, but give it a structure, keep everybody happy, get it in on time, all those incredible practical problems we all face, while that just like a volcano pouring out inspiration of extraordinary genius. That might be one moment. I've always actually wanted to be in Russia at the time of the revolution. Not exclusively operatically, but certainly culturally, artistically. It was a time of enormous ferment and adventure. And with the theatre, with Meyerhold, with expression, with constructivism, I think there was an enormous shift at that point, and courage and daring in Russia, which obviously closed down shortly afterwards. And that would include the premiere of Lady Macbeth Tense, wouldn't it? That'd be exciting.
Yeah. But people tend to forget that there was great idealism also in the arts in those early years in the Soviet Union.
I mean, I think that's modernism born in the 1920s, and we've just been recycling it in various ways ever since. But the idea of modernism was then.
Is there any other particular composer other than Mozart that you would like to meet?
I'd like to meet Tchaikovsky, I think, because...
Tell us more.
If you read the letters, he was obviously this really lovely man, I think. I mean, I really like him when I read the correspondence, whereas, you know, you couldn't say that about Wagner. I mean, no? I mean, maybe a brief drink before dinner would be about as much as you could manage with someone like me without putting my foot in it, really. And even, you know, I think, of course, I completely love Verdi, but I think he was probably not a very good conversationalist, taciturn, kept himself. And at which point of his life would I like to meet Verdi? You know, well, I'd like to meet him when he was young and angry. So I think Mozart's my god, but Tchaikovsky, I think, was a wonderful human being.
And I think Mozart was Tchaikovsky's god as well, so that's a nice little connection. Any other first night apart from Idomeneo?
Apart from Idomeneo, well, I suppose it would have been nice. No, not really that one. I think Wozzeck would have been a good first night to be at. I think that would have blown me away.
Yeah, well, especially if you could get the time machine to bring you back to sort of the musical developments that were known up to that point.
Well, that's right. If I was there then, out of that, where did it come from? The sounds, the idea, the aesthetic, the whole world, extraordinary moments, I think.
And is any singer you'd like to sample from whatever century you might go to?
Oh, that's difficult. I mean, yes, I think. I mean, I wish I'd heard Lauri Volpi. I wish I'd heard some of those 18th century virtuosi, of course. Colbrand, who is clearly the most amazing artist, no? All those Rossini roles that he wrote for Naples are extraordinary dramatic roles. So she must have had an extraordinary, compelling theatrical gift, I think. Any other singers? Well, Callas, of course. Obviously, rather banal thing to say, but you know, how can I not say Maria Callas?
Yeah. And this, believe it or not, is the last question for this impossible interview. If you received an invitation from Wexford Festival and they allowed you to choose the opera, what work would it be and why?
Oh, what work at Wexford? I suppose what I'd like to do at Wexford, maybe a new commission perhaps would be good. Obviously in English. That's a very embarrassing thing to say. We'd like to say in Irish, but I think that would be, I think I mean in English, to be honest. Something, yeah, something contemporary.
Okay.
Something that deals with Ireland.
Okay, so Graham, Vick, it's been wonderful to do this impossible interview with you for Wexford Festival Opera, and here's hoping that we and everyone else get to see each other in the flesh sooner rather than later. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Michael. I fear it's not the first time I've been called impossible.
Thank you.